Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So this is the fourth and final session that we have of our tafsir of Surah Jinn. And Alhamdulillah, we have finished the entire surah. And this last session is dedicated to understanding just some of the implications behind the jinn world, and especially some important and relevant areas which we're going to be looking at today, insha'Allah ta'ala. The first section that we want to look at is the whole discussion or the concept of ruqya, or exorcism itself. And we discussed this briefly. We defined what ruqya was, and we discussed just some of the basic fundamentals of what ruqya entails. Insha'Allah, today we want to look at a little bit of more on the practical end of things. So more of the practical issues of the ruqya itself. Who is qualified to do ruqya? Why are they qualified? What are some of the things that you and we should look for whenever we go to a practitioner or an exorcist? What are some of the things that you should look for? And also, today we will also look at some of the signs and symptoms of somebody who is possessed, and how the actual exorcist, how he or she themselves would perform the exorcism. What are some of the things that they should look for, and then begin to determine or diagnose whether it is a jinn possession or not. Then that will also take us into the second part of the discussion, which we will conclude with, which is the discussion of witchcraft or black magic and things along those natures. So basically the same idea of what to look for. How do you know when somebody has sihr done on them? How do you remove it? And who should you go to remove it? If you find like an ornament or something in your home, and you know that it's determined or confirmed that this is from sihr, what do you do with that object? Do you come and you bring it to Brother Musleh Khan and say, here, you just get rid of it? Or can you do something about it yourself? So those are the things we're going to be talking about, insha'Allah. So let's begin with the ruqya discussion. We all know that the ruqya is exorcism, and the raqi is the exorcist or the practitioner himself, the one who practices this science in this field. So what are the qualities that you look for when it comes to an exorcist? Number one, this is the most important. I mean, it's the most important for every act of worship that we do. You can all guess what it is. And of course, it is the sincerity for Allah Azza wa Jal. Having ikhlas to do ruqya is basically, it's give or take. It's either it's going to work or it's not going to work. If you have sincerity, your ruqya is going to work. The level of that sincerity will determine the level or the effect of that ruqya itself. And now, why is this so crucial? We briefly discussed this last week, that a lot of the exorcists that do this kind of job, they in their heart internally may do it for the sake of Allah. But externally, they'll probably be looking for other things. When you're an exorcist, believe me, you get a lot of attention. And so that whole popularity and that awareness is increased. You need to make sure that you're always focused on what you're doing is for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. Because basically, you start getting these titles that are attached to you. Like, I've been called Ghostbusters one time, right? Like, you start getting these really weird titles because people admire you're an exorcist. Very few people can do that kind of job. So you need to make sure that even practically for yourself, just you as a human being, you as a slave, that you're doing it only to please Allah Azza wa Jal. Also, what entails or what revolves around this concept of sincerity when it comes to exorcism is that you don't take any money for it. The Prophet ﷺ forbade this, especially when it came to ruqya. Ruqya should always be done for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. The reason, well, one of the wisdoms why you don't take money for it is because you don't have a deadline of when you can say, well, I'm finished with you. We've diagnosed the problem and it's cured. You're not able to do that. No one can say that you've been cured from sihr or you will be cured from possession in 3 days. Nobody can determine that. You can determine that with a lot of other sicknesses, because like when you go to the doctor, they'll tell you take these antibiotics for 30 days, and after 30 days then more or less you're cured. With ruqya, you can't do that. There's no time limit, there's no expiration date, there's no deadline for it. That's why you can't take money for it, or what's one of the wisdom scholars they've given us. But the point is here is because it's a spiritual cure, it's a spiritual medicine, so it is treated only for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. Number two, the second criteria that you're going to look for when you look for an exorcist is you're going to look for the person who has ilm and knowledge. A person who has ilm and a person who has knowledge. Now, you're looking for two types of knowledge, particularly more than others. You're looking for the person who is well versed in aqidah sciences, so who is strong in tawheed. How do you know when somebody is strong in tawheed? I'm going to tell you that in a moment. And the second type of knowledge that you're looking for from that individual is you're looking that they have the knowledge of the ahkam of the sharia. So you're looking that they have knowledge of Islamic laws, the do's and the don'ts, the halals and the harams and everything in between that. Now, how do you know when somebody has tawheed or they have knowledge of tawheed? First of all, they've gone through all the basic books of tawheed. All the basic books of tawheed. Now, so this is more of a theoretical indication that this person here has literally gone through books like what I have in front of me, Kitab al-Tawheed. Some of the students sitting here, you've gone through this entire book. This book here is absolutely crucial when you want to study or become a raqi or an exorcist. All of the other books that are related to this, like the Usul al-Thalatha, Aqidat al-Wasitiyya, all of these basic fundamental books, these are all the theory or the information that you need in order to qualify yourself that you have sound aqidah, you have pure aqidah. What also is important when you study Tawheed is that you also have the knowledge, or that person should have the knowledge of the different firaq or sects of Islam, different groups of Islam, where they stand, what are some of their basic rulings regarding those sects, because you might have a person who is possessed in front of you, but they don't believe in Ahlul Sunnah's Aqidah. They might believe in somebody else as the last prophet. You might believe in something else or some other issue when it comes to their Aqidah. You need to be able to diagnose that and address it and correct it then and there. So that's when it comes to the Tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal. What's also crucial when it comes to the knowledge is that that person, part of their Tawheed, they should have memorized the entire Quran. Now, this is not a criteria to be an exorcist, but this is something that I personally place on, and many of the ruqa or the exorcists, they also do this as well. It's not a condition. If you're not hafidh al-Quran, doesn't mean you can't perform exorcism, but it's just one of those things that strengthens you as a da'i and as an exorcist. So you're strong in the sciences of Tawheed, and in addition to that, you have Allah's book memorized with you, and it's with you all the time. So you want to make sure that you are you've memorized the Quran. In addition to this, you also have to make sure that that exorcist can recite the Quran clearly with an eloquent voice, understands all the tajweed rules. So if somebody says to you, okay, I'm going to perform ruqya on you. So when they start reciting, they get صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. This is a person it's silly and it's not effective at all. This is a person that is not qualified to do ruqya. You should at least be able to pronounce all the letters and all the connotations and the tajweed rules. It should be clear and explicit. That person should be very strong in their recitation of the Quran itself. Number three, so that's the knowledge. When it comes to the ahkam, before we go into number three, when it comes to the ahkam, we're looking for basic fiqh here. We're looking for basic fiqh and fundamentals when it comes to Islamic laws. Why? Because you might have a patient in front of you that's not dressed very well. Or you might have a patient that's in front of you that, has been smoking or something. You need to be able to know what are the rulings behind this in order to address the issue. Why is this so important? Because sometimes when that person comes to you and what's apparent in front of you is that they have a weakness of iman, that alone could be the solution and cure their problem. So if you say to them, well, look, I can smell cigarettes from you. Are you smoking? or do you smoke? And the person will say yes. So what you will do immediately is you'll stop them and say, quit smoking and tell me what happens. I can tell you many times this has worked, where you just simply tell a person quit smoking and the jinn leaves them. They perform their own ruqya themselves, and they don't even know that they can do that. So person who has the ahkam and rulings of al-Islam, they're able to determine these little things. Even when it comes to a woman, she might come in front of you, but her hijab is like falling off her head or something. So all of these things, you can address them and say, look, make sure that you're dressed modestly, you're dressed well, and you have a complete hijab. In and of itself can cure them from their problems. This is why some of the ulama, they say a woman's hijab is a protection from possession and jinn. When a woman has perfected her hijab, not wear it. I'm talking about the woman who has perfected her hijab. In other words, if you wear a hijab and it's transparent, that's not a hijab anymore. It may take the ruling of a hijab, but it's not perfected. She will lose the majority of the reward when it comes to hijab, because the whole purpose of it is to cover that part of herself. And if it's not accomplished, then she cannot claim that I'm wearing hijab, or look, this is it. And I mean, a lot of cultures have this problem. So the person, the raqi, he's able to address these issues and make sure that they are corrected immediately. So you see what's happening already? A good exorcist prepares you for the exorcism itself. A good exorcist will prepare you. He wouldn't just come to you and say, okay, you need an exorcism, then khalas, I'll do it for you. No, they're going to start to look for some issues and some problems and understand a little bit about your background. So we're going to talk about that shortly, inshallah, in a few minutes, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala.